Yeah, I run a content agency called Catalyst. We've been AI native since the beginning, and only because we started about 2 years ago. So it's always been top of mind of like, how can we use AI systems to help build something a little bit more scalable? Agencies and traditionally content agencies were not a very scalable, business to be in. Content has always been like forefront of everything I think about, for better or worse. And so when AI came out, I was like, wow, this is really cool. After spending hours and days on set, being able to see like, oh, wow, production time of any kind of piece of content potentially can be reduced. And obviously the written word is the easiest one to tackle for AI. Let's dive into it. So I think the promise of today is like a self-learning content system. And I will deliver on that promise, but I want to set some context first with my beautiful Excel draw, which I didn't make, by the way. I asked AI to make it. This one, the second part I made. But essentially, I think one of the challenges of content marketers, or just like marketers in general, when you were creating content, the production time took so long on like creating a long form article, getting that through whatever layers of approval, editing it, revisions, getting it graphic designs, whatever. The production time was insane. And so you were planning quarterly, monthly, if you were lucky, a content calendar, and you were kind of locked into it because you had to accommodate that production time. And so something that's always been in the back of my head from this, actually, that's not true. It probably hit me about, 8 months ago. So it's been in the back of my head for a while. I just haven't had the opportunity to build it. And we've started implementing it. But the content plan and the content strategy can be so much, the feedback loop can be so much quicker now with AI. And I think that is, to me, the biggest unlock, because we're no longer just doing like campaign content or like evergreen content. And so to dramatically explain how long this process used to take, you would do like, a couple weeks of quarterly planning, meet with your executives, figuring out what goals were, figuring out roadmap, what the budget was. You would have to make all the briefs for every piece of content going out, articles, newsletters, social posts. You'd have to get sign off on all of that. Production would take about 8 to 15 weeks alone. And then anyone who works at a bigger company knows the issues with the approval layer, and just the stakeholders and everyone's involvement. And so it could take about, oh yeah. You're doomed. You are doomed, which you still might run into that problem. You just get to that problem a lot quicker, unless you build a Claude agent that acts as a legal reviewer, which no, but like if you have a good legal team, put it on them. If you have a good legal team, they will provide you guidelines and rules and written documentation. And you could feed that into an agent and just be like, hey, check for these things. And it's probably a pretty, probably gets you 80% of the way, like most AI. So anyway, so I've kind of been, when I think about content strategy, we do a lot of LinkedIn content, which obviously has a very quick feedback loop. But I was like, why doesn't this work for all content? And so the way I've kind of reimagined how a modern B2B SaaS, thinks about content strategy, and this is where I'd love your guys' input on, because, I run this as an agency, and, I kind of need the litmus test of if this would fly internally. But the idea is that we have a few different systems working together. The first one is just like a catch-all signals sources layer. You connect your note taker, you connect any workshops or webinars that you do, LinkedIn creators, or, insert social creator there that you like. You have it searching for industry news. You have it searching YouTube channels, either your own or other people's in the space, and then past performing content, right? So it's always retroactively looking at what performed, and everything gets funneled into this just like massive list of sources. Then you have this like filtering layer that knows who your ICP is, who is writing this content, what your strategy is. You can kind of get it as granular, but it's like it understands your brand and who's writing this content. And that filters through the sources and be like, hey, could we adapt this to be part of our own Does this fit our strategy? Would this resonate with our ICP? And so that runs on like a scheduled cadence. So it goes in and it pulls out of the barrel. This is a good idea. This is a good idea. And then it goes, well, what would the brief look like for it? It's kind of assuming if it's a blog post, if it's long form, it probably stays long form and then, potentially shortened. This is kind of where the repurposing for different formats takes place. And it evaluates like, all right, is this a good LinkedIn post? Is this a good article? Should we do a campaign around this? And it's kind of being a strategic layer. You obviously could have a human in the loop step to this process, but it kind of makes those decisions and then just throws them into I said a Notion board here, where it's filtered content ideas that are actually relevant to you and your business.